The day my wife left me in the hospital, it wasn't just my body that was broken. The doctor said I would recover. They said the accident would leave scars but I could heal. What they didn't tell me was how I'd recover from the betrayal that cut deeper than any injury. I'm James Carter. I used to think love was enough to survive anything. Then I woke up in that sterile, white room and saw my wife, Emily, standing at the door, looking at me like I wasn't the man she married. Her first words were cold, detached. "I can't do this, James. I won't carry a disabled person for the rest of my life." Her eyes never met mine as she turned and walked out of that room, hand in hand with our neighbor, Greg. The man she'd been confiding in for months. The man who had already made his presence felt at the edges of our life, but now had the audacity to take what was mine. She left me there, in a bed I couldn't get out of, alone with 2 kids and no way to fight back. I couldn't chase her. I couldn't even stand. And for months I didn't. But I didn't give up either. I focused on the kids. I focused on the insurance claim, the one Emily had no idea I'd already started. And by the time I received the $5 million payout, I was a different man. My body healed, but my heart had hardened. When she came crawling back, begging for forgiveness, all I had to do was smile. I wasn't just going to give her what she wanted. This time she was going to earn it. I didn't answer Emily's calls for the first few weeks. At first, it was silence like she had done to me when I was at my weakest. Then it was her letters, apologies written on paper, pretending like the woman I married hadn't disappeared the second my body gave out. I read them all. Each one. But each letter only confirmed what I already knew. She didn't regret what she did. She regretted losing access to the life I built. The kids hadn't asked about her for the first few days. They were too young to understand betrayal. But when they did, I just told them the truth. Mommy's gone for now. But she'll come back when she's ready. And I knew she would. By the time she finally showed up on my doorstep, I was already prepared. She stood there, still wearing the same pitying expression, the one she wore when I was lying helpless in that hospital bed. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice thick with rehearsed emotion. "I didn't know what to do. I've made so many mistakes, James." I stared at her for a long time. I let her voice fade out as I weighed my words. "I'm glad you came," I said flatly, holding the door just slightly open. "But I need to tell you something. You're not the one who gets to decide how this story ends." She blinked, then tried to step inside, but I held the door firm. "You don't get to walk back in like you've done nothing wrong. There's a price to pay now." She frowned, confusion flickering in her eyes. "Don't worry. You'll get what you want, but not in the way you think." I closed the door behind me, leaving her standing in the rain. I didn't hear from Emily again for 3 days. Then, as expected, she showed up unannounced. This time, she was standing on the doorstep with a bouquet of roses, a smile on her face that didn't reach her eyes. She was still trying to act like she was the one in control. "I've been thinking about everything," she said, holding the flowers out to me. "I know I messed up. I shouldn't have left, but I'm ready to make it right. Can we just move past this?" I didn't take the flowers. I didn't even flinch. "Move past it?" I repeated. "Is that what you think? You just expect everything to go back to the way it was? Like I'm going to forgive you just because you show up with flowers?" Her smile faltered, but she tried again. "I'm sorry, James. I was scared. I didn't know how to handle everything." Stop. The word felt cold in my mouth, but it was the only word I could say. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was just done with the games, the manipulation, the pretending. "You didn't just leave me in that hospital bed. You left me for a man who you thought would give you a better life. And now that I'm back on my feet, you're showing up like nothing happened." Her eyes filled with tears. "I made a huge mistake," she whispered. "I was wrong." "I'm sure you were," I said, stepping aside to let her inside. "But the thing is, Emily, it's not up to me to forgive you anymore. It's up to me to decide what happens next. And you don't get to be part of that unless you prove it." She was silent, unsure of what I meant. That's when I handed her the envelope. The one she would regret opening. Emily's hands shook as she opened the envelope. The moment she saw the documents inside, her face paled. She looked up at me, confusion and fear dancing in her eyes. "What is this?" she whispered. I watched her carefully as she read through the papers. Documents that would change everything. They were legal papers. A formal request for divorce, a full custody petition for the kids, and most importantly, a claim for the insurance payout. Her voice trembled as she looked back at me, desperate. "James, no, you can't be serious. You know this is about the kids, don't you? You know that what we had was worth fighting for. We can fix this." I stepped back, folding my arms across my chest, keeping my distance. You had no problem walking away when you thought I was useless when I was lying in that bed. But now you want to come back because you see the payoff. Because you think you can win me back with words. I could see her processing it, the way her brain scrambled to find a way to fix this. But it was already too late. I know how you think, Emily, I said, voice firm. You thought I was a fool. That you could use me for whatever you needed, and I would just smile and play the part of the dutiful husband. She shook her head, lips quivering. I was wrong. I know I was wrong, but we can fix it, James. We can get back what we had. I didn't respond immediately. I watched her crumble, but I didn't flinch. This wasn't about forgiveness. This was about control. You left me when I was vulnerable. Now I'm in control. Her eyes widened in horror as I calmly added, and the $5 million payout? It's already in the kids' accounts. You don't get a penny. Her hands dropped the papers and she collapsed on the floor. But I had no sympathy. Not anymore. For a moment she just sat there. On the floor, surrounded by the papers. I could hear her breathing, shallow, desperate, trying to hold back the tears, but they came anyway. James, please, she said through sobs, her voice cracking. I know I messed up. I was scared. I wasn't thinking straight. Please. I want to fix this. I'll do anything. I didn't say a word. I just stood there watching her fall apart and I felt nothing. She had made her choice and now she was reaping the consequences. I could have told her that I didn't care. I could have walked away and never looked back. But I had something else in mind. Something far more satisfying than that. I walked to the living room, picked up my phone and called my lawyer. It's done, I said. Get the papers filed. Full custody, permanent separation. My lawyer didn't even hesitate. Understood. I'll start the process. I ended the call, walked back to the kitchen and sat down at the table, calmly sipping my coffee while Emily sobbed in the corner. She looked up at me, her face contorted with disbelief. You're really doing this? You're going to take everything from me? I stared at her, unblinking. You already took everything from me when you left, Emily. When you chose to abandon me and the kids for your own selfish desires, you lost your right to be a part of our lives. Her face twisted into a look of rage. You'll regret this, she spat. I'll make sure you regret this. I smiled. No, Emily. You'll regret it. I stood up, leaving her there in the kitchen and walked out the front door, locking it behind me. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and legal meetings. I didn't talk to Emily again. Not a word. No more explanations. No more begging. She was trying to reach me, I knew that, but I didn't answer. I had one goal, to protect my kids and ensure that Emily's games didn't touch their future. She didn't get it. Her first move was predictable. A call to her lawyer, of course. They'd send letters. They'd threaten to take me to court. But that wasn't going to happen. Not anymore. Not after the paperwork I'd already filed. I had made sure the divorce proceedings were airtight. The custody petition was watertight. And most importantly, the insurance payout? Well, that was now in a trust, one the kids would have access to but Emily would never touch. Not a dime. A few days later, I got a call from Emily's lawyer. She wanted to negotiate the custody arrangement. She wanted to discuss terms. I wasn't interested. I've already made my decision, I told him. And so has the court. I've moved on. He tried to pressure me, playing the usual games, but I didn't bite. I hung up. The next call, however, was different. This time it was Emily. I'm sorry, she said, voice soft, almost pleading. I made a mistake. I thought I could handle everything, but I was wrong. Please, let's fix this. I didn't say anything for a long time. Then finally I spoke. I'm done fixing you, Emily. I'm fixing my kids. I'm fixing myself. There was a pause. Then a sob. I'm not your responsibility anymore, I said coldly. And neither is the life you tried to take from us. I hung up, feeling the weight of those words. It wasn't out of bitterness. It was just the truth. I wasn't her savior anymore. I was her consequence. By the following week, the storm had passed, at least on the surface. The media hadn't gotten involved yet. No one knew about the $5 million insurance payout. No one knew that I had made sure Emily couldn't touch a cent of it. But the news would come soon. It always did. What mattered now was the kids. Mila was adjusting slowly. There were nights when she'd ask about her mom. I'd answer honestly but gently. The last thing I wanted was to make her feel caught between us. On Friday, as I sat at the dining table, papers scattered around, I heard a knock at the door. It wasn't Emily. It was the private investigator I had hired a month ago, the one who had been tailing Emily's every move after she left the hospital. He came with a thick folder of photos, receipts, and more digital data. "Here's everything you asked for," he said, setting it down in front of me. I flipped through the folder. The pictures were clear. Emily at a resort in the Bahamas with her new boyfriend, the same man she had left me for. They'd spent days together. He wasn't just some rebound. I skimmed the receipts. Hotel stays. Expensive restaurants. And what struck me the most was the last one. A dinner reservation at a high-end restaurant, the same date I'd signed the final paperwork for the trust fund. She wasn't just living a double life. She was planning her escape with him, while playing the victim to me. I didn't feel anger. Just cold realization. I gathered the papers, went to the kitchen, and sent them all to my lawyer with a note. "Make sure this gets to the right hands. It's time Emily faces everything she's running from." It was finally time for her consequences to catch up with her. By the time the legal process was finalized, I had already built a life without her. The court hearing was a blur of noise, her lawyer desperately spinning tales about how she'd changed, and how we could work things out for the kid's sake. But I didn't need to speak. The evidence spoke for me. Her affair. The stolen money. The neglect. The lies. I sat quietly as her lawyer struggled to poke holes in the undeniable proof. When it was my turn, I simply looked at the judge and said, "I'm not here for retribution. I'm here because my children deserve better than a mother who abandons them when it's inconvenient." The judge didn't hesitate. He handed down a ruling, full custody to me with supervised visitation for Emily. She had no access to the family trust, no financial support from me, and no room in the life I had rebuilt. I walked out of the courtroom without looking back. I didn't need closure from her. I didn't need anything from her anymore. That night, as I tucked Mila into bed, I watched her face relax into sleep, peaceful, untroubled, and whole again. The kids were safe. My home was safe. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't a shadow of my former self. I was exactly where I needed to be, where I had always belonged. The doorbell rang late that evening. It was Emily. She stood there, her face pale, her eyes wide with regret. "I know you're angry," she said, voice shaking. "But can we just talk? I made a mistake. I'm sorry." I looked at her, not with fury, not with anger, just with a calm finality. "Goodbye, Emily." I closed the door softly, and for the first time I felt free.